The paper I'm giving today is part of a very, very long ongoing project I have about the Crusades as a site of memory, and especially how I can communicate that to my students and in education more generally. But I'm going to move away from when I was 16 and turn into a slightly more troubling age. When I was 40, my students began doing this, and mostly the boys started doing, these 18, 19-year-olds began making this gesture with their hands and repeating, when I was 16, I won a great victory, imitating Baldwin IV, the Leper King, the version of him in the film Kingdom of Heaven from 2005. And when I say they kept repeating it, I'm serious. One of them said when I was 16, it was an avalanche of voices just repeating it over and over and over and over again. This happened to the extent that 2 students insisted on doing the pose with 2 of their teachers at their graduation party, which definitely puzzled the deputy headmistress who wandered onto the stage on the left side of the picture. If something elicits this reaction, it's worth taking a closer look at, especially, and since so much of what you're going to see is, to use a word my students use all the time about these memes, cringe, I speculate why this appeals to teenage boys and young men. So what I'd like to focus on in this is the use of the King Baldwin meme on 3 different platforms. This is all connected in a broader context. These memes are intertwined with the memory of the Crusades, questions of gender and masculinity, and so many other trends. It also includes the tendency to take clips from the tolerant, progressive, and agnostic film Kingdom of Heaven and misuse them with a political agenda. And of course also the Deus Vult memes, or God Wills It memes, whose popularity skyrocketed in 2016 and has recently returned with a vengeance over the last 6 months or so after photos surfaced of US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and his Jerusalem cross and Deus Vult tattoos. Since I am mostly a teacher more than an academic, comments from my students will be liberally applied as I hope to deliver a few suggestions. What could we do as scholars and educators? Because as Tristan just said, we don't like the way the world is going. But first of all, the tricky thing about using memes as sources, because are we supposed to take them seriously? And since this is a Wednesday morning, I would like to have a little audience participation and interaction. So I'm not going to ask you to create your own memes, I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes. And I have to stay up here for the camera, so don't worry, I won't suddenly be doing a Voldemort, I can touch you thing. So just sit there, close your eyes please. Oh, sorry, that was stupid, open your eyes again. You should see the meme first. Then we're going to do a vote on everything. So I brought to you a Deus Vult meme that I often use in my classes, showing 2 school children dressed as crusaders or templars, one of them handing a note to the other one, and the note saying, when I drop my quill, that's when we start slaying the Muslim kids, Deus Vult. Playing on Islamophobia, crusades, school shootings, everything in between. And now is the time for you to close your eyes, sorry. Because the question is, are we supposed to take this seriously? And with your eyes closed, we're going to do an anonymous poll on this. So please raise your right hand if you think we are supposed to take this seriously. Raise your left hand if you think we are supposed to take this as a joke, and raise both hands if you are a little bit in doubt. Okay, now you may open your, now keep your hands up if they're up. Open your eyes and take a look around. Well then, I don't know how many decades of analytical training we have in this room right now, and quite a few of you are still in doubt, are we supposed to take this seriously? And with all of our training, imagine what it's like being a teenager encountering this online. In their brilliant book, The Devil's Historian from 2020, Amy Kaufman and Paul Sturtevant cover some other cases of misuse of the Crusades that are so over the top that it feels like it should be a joke, such as a UKIP candidate for Parliament who in 2015 retweeted, quote, a cartoon of St. George lancing the Prophet Muhammad with the caption, Happy St. George's Day, infidels, end quote. Or the Christchurch terrorist writing, ask yourself, what would Pope Urban II do, in all caps in his manifesto, which did, to use the proper term, shitpost on purpose at times. Sadly, none of those were meant in jest. But quite a few of us are in doubt about what to do with this. Now, the image you saw earlier of the Leper King with the raised hand was sporadically used on social media as early as 2021. It picked up steam in 2023 and completely exploded in early 2024, followed by a sudden crash, as you can see here on the Google searches for King Baldwin. As AI or LLMs replace Google searches, or did so over the course of the same time span, this depiction is incomplete, but I think it still gives a broad idea. So let's turn to TikTok and the King Baldwin videos you find there. So I'm going to leave the PowerPoint for a second. Escape. Go to TikTok. And then I think you should just see what a standard King Baldwin TikTok looks like. Yeah, that's it. Most of the edits I see use the same background music. It's a song called If We Being Real by somebody called Yeet, which is about kicking a drug habit. I don't know how it's relevant to this, but apparently it adds to the general atmosphere or vibe. TikTok remains flooded with King Baldwin edits. Numerous of them have been viewed millions of times. And some edits add a bit of fan fiction about King Baldwin overcoming obstacles and prejudice, how nobody believed in him, but when he was 16 he won a great victory, sometimes followed by some commercial medieval misuse through rather insistent sale of merchandise. This led to innumerable similar versions and obviously quite a few parodies, as you may see in this one that was posted to YouTube.
Alexander the Great, a Macedonian king.
Dude, this is so lame for real, bro. Miss G, can we please learn about something more interesting?
You want to learn about something more interesting? King Baldwin. King Baldwin was admired by the Senate.
Yeah, kind of looks like my classroom, but some slightly troubling thing going on here. But there is, you can see the inspiration, and there is something inspirational about King Baldwin. To quote Bernard Hamilton's 2000 book on the Leper King and his heirs, Bernard Hamilton summed up the eyewitness accounts of King Baldwin with saying that he possessed great physical courage and a highly developed sense of honor. His courage is shown in his willingness to ride into battle, even though he was unable to remount if he were unhorsed, which in one case led to the death of one of his best strategists, but very courageous to do so anyway.
Alexander the Great.
Moving on. So the question is, why does all of this appeal? And I've interviewed some of my students. I've had them do papers on King Baldwin memes, so you will see quite a few quotes from them, but this is the way I summed it up. The mystery or the aura of King Baldwin, the mask, the bandages, the general sense of strangeness is appealing. The Sigma male vibes, I really hate that I have to understand what a Sigma male is, but it's a part of it. The mystery, the boldness, decisiveness, agency. Boldness was a term that came up a lot when I interviewed students about what fascinated them about Sigma male. So this is what they get out of this. The relatability part. Clearly this man has some struggles, and also the entire when I was 16 element appeals to the student. They can reflect themselves in being a teenager and having to overcome something. And also how it tied into similar trends that were not even medieval. Because if you look around for other Sigma male representations, a lot of the students talk about Patrick Bateman from American Psycho being seen as a hero. Well done on your media literacy right there. Tyler Durden from Fight Club, the Peaky Blinders series, Pablo Escobar as somebody to emulate somehow. The Wolf of Wall Street film, all of those. Quite often not understanding that a lot of it is satire. And of course, this is also an appeal that may be found online. I stumbled upon a blog by somebody called Godly Historian who wrote, and there's a long quote coming here. King Baldwin IV had such an impactful life, and he only lived until he was 24. I'm about to turn 24, and like many in my lifetime, I was not given rulership over the Kingdom of Jerusalem. I think you can replace many with everyone. But he goes on to say, I am the eldest son of several siblings and raised by a single mother. There are times when I feel the heavy burden of responsibility to provide, or in the very least, help as much as I can. And if I was able to be honest, sometimes I decide to quit, but then I look at the life of King Baldwin IV and quickly remember that I need to be calm and look to God for guidance. So if anyone shows me King Baldwin IV meme and expect me to laugh, I will simply say, you know, King Baldwin IV was actually kind of cool. In a way, this could possibly be construed as cringe, but it really ties in with what a lot of my students notice, because to keep on going with my student observations, they spot a lot of insecurity and identity. This is where we talk about both general trends in our society, but also what they see in the memes. When I had private interviews with some of the boys especially, they openly said, who am I and what does it mean to be a real man? A question they obviously ask in their teens. They see purpose and brotherhood as shared ideas, simply some of them say, I feel alone when I'm at home in my room, but when I meet my friends at school and we go like this, there's a sense of brotherhood or kinship. Okay, yeah. It's a way of navigating through teenage angst, and as a sign of our times, easy solutions to complex issues, which is really, really something dangerous that appeals to them here. So this is one of the classes I worked with. I had them do papers on Baldwin the Fourth memes. What was noteworthy was that most of the boys insisted that everything was just for fun, and most of the girls said, I have no idea if I'm supposed to take this seriously, and also what the hell is going on with young men today, if this appeals to them. So it was really, really interesting seeing that part. A disclaimer about the students I carried out personal private interviews with is that the students who had most to say may not be representative of an at-risk group, because those students were generally ones who received good marks and were somewhat popular and wanted to say something about all of this. But they're also students with a large network. They're heavily online, 5 to 8 hours of screen time per day on social media. And often I thought they demonstrated some remarkable knowledge and introspection. So these are some things that they said during interviews. On the Sigma male trend, one of them said that it's too much confidence and too little confidence at the same time. It becomes a way to cover up your insecurities, with someone adding, it just feeds insecure men and keeps them trapped in a vicious circle. They also said it becomes a way of dealing with the taboo of men's mental health, a defense mechanism. It numbs weakness, but it's pure facade. It's so cringe. We can sit here and laugh about 5 life hacks or tips from Peaky Blinders in a TikTok, but for some, it's the only way of coping. I really like this introspection from a 19-year-old. And one of them, and I think this one is noteworthy, older generations easily worry that boys are becoming brainwashed, but most of it is immaturity, and as you age, the student added, I'm now 20 years old. You realize how stupid you were. You outgrow it. Now we see that it's cringe. When I was 17, I could think that some of them were cool, I have angry thoughts, but with stability you never end up completely out there. I did challenge him a bit why he didn't become radicalized in any way, and he had some really good thoughts on that one too. But I think the last one really illustrates teenage angst, insecurity, and alienation, which isn't really anything new by any stretch of the imagination. But the difference, and the students know this, is that now they're bombarded with images designed to prey on their insecurities 24/7. It is noteworthy how the students seem perfectly aware that the King Baldwin memes are part of a broader trend, and it doesn't really take any prompting for them to associate those memes with a general discussion about gender issues, including potentially toxic masculinity, the male loneliness epidemic, incels, looks maxing, all of those buzzwords. Of course, we cannot separate 21st century use of the Crusades without seeing some association with ideas about clashes of civilization. Here I encounter student disagreement. While some claim that the King Baldwin TikToks are not connected with Islamophobia, others see so many overlaps with Deus Vult memes that those two cannot be separate from each other. No matter what, when the King Baldwin memes spread from TikTok to other platforms, the debate became, shall we say, less nuanced. So now we're heading on to YouTube. It is no coincidence that a YouTube channel called Nude decided to upload 2 clips from Kingdom of Heaven in October 2023. The thumbnails for those 2 are clearly meant to be recognizable, provide clicks, and have proven to be quite popular, with 4 million views for Assemble the Army and almost 10 million for Jerusalem Has Come. Both are unedited, but still attract numerous references to the meme in the comment sections, along with some calls for a new crusade. And once again, are we supposed to take calls for crusades in YouTube comments seriously? I'm not sure, but maybe we should, in true meme fashion. Far-right, all-right Christian nationalism and so on appropriation of Kingdom of Heaven is nothing new, which on the surface seems a little inexplicable, since one of the film's main points is to lament that religious fanatics on both sides push for war, while the moderate factions want to live and let live in tolerant bliss. For instance, fan-made videos for Swedish power metal band Sabaton's 2016 song The Last Stand often recycle scenes from Kingdom of Heaven to fit the chorus about fighting for the glory of heaven, even if the song is not about the Crusades, as pointed out by the band on numerous occasions, but about the Christian siege of Rome in 1527. Comment sections under those videos definitely do not seem to be playing around, as may be seen in these examples. This one calling for a new crusade, and this one, these ones, with the bottom one tells about our government's BLM is now big hit on vegetarians and being gay, which may be one of my favorite YouTube comments ever, encapsulating every single right-wing talking point while being so grammatically wrong. In this way, Kingdom of Heaven and The Last Stand join multiple cases outside of medievalism of completely misunderstood pieces of fiction, such as Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, Green Day's Wake Me Up When September Ends, and so on. More recently, and in a complete turnaround, Sabaton released the song Templars on the 25th of April this year. It did not take many days for fan-made videos to appear, and at this point, you can probably guess what the thumbnail of the most popular one is. It's not that one. It is not this androgynous, slightly androgynous portrayal of Baldwin at the Battle of Montchisard. This is from an 1840s painting in the Hall of Crusades in the Palace of Versailles. It is, of course, this one that is the thumbnail. The song spends most of its energy telling the listener about the injustices of the trial of the Templars, but that does not stop YouTubers from almost solely including clips of Crusaders killing Muslims in Kingdom of Heaven. The question is why scenes from a decidedly progressive and at times anti-religious film such as Kingdom of Heaven has become the domain of the far right. The answer may lie in the scarcity of Crusades films and series. Most videos recycle the same scenes from Kingdom of Heaven, the Swedish film Arn, The Knight Templar, and the Nightfall series. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if Paul Verhoeven had made his planned Crusade movie in the 1990s starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. We will never know. Editors and YouTubers make do with what they have, even if it means twisting and turning their source material, as may be seen in our next example. The striking and easily recognizable image of Baldwin from Kingdom of Heaven is also used to lure in those scrolling their way through YouTube and ensnare them in something with a rather nefarious purpose. This is the thumbnail for a video by a user called PaxTube. It's received about 4 million views, was uploaded in March 2023, so the thumbnail may be later than the original video. And it's about 10 times more popular than his other videos about the Spanish Inquisition, abortion, and, well, you pretty much have an idea where we're going with this. The video quotes the far-right website Gates of Vienna. It can't say the word Catholic enough times, and it insists that he does not want to fault anyone for conquering because that's just natural. But then he does so, and claims that Muslims will always want to take slaves. As Kaufman and Sturtevant point out, other radical traditionalist Catholic groups such as the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Church Militant, previously known as Real Catholic TV, made the same points in the 2010s and deliberately tied true Catholicism to chivalry, masculinity in its most patriarchal form, and violence. As previously mentioned, my students disagree on whether or not there is any Islamophobia connected to the King Baldwin TikToks, but it doesn't take many clicks on YouTube for the algorithm to send them somewhere like this video. If we move over to Twitter, we don't really want to do it. The use of Baldwin IV becomes even less diverse in its political affiliation. Some posts are still centered on masculinity and motivation, describing Baldwin IV with words such as, and I quote, an absolute unit, a legend, and straight gangster. Once again, misuse with a financial gain rears its head, as may be seen in this fairly popular post from August 2023, which less than surreptitiously attempts to make young men sign up for an online course on how to be a lethal gentleman. It's a fantastic website. If you go to it, you have to sign up for his Substack, and if you don't want to do that, you can click a button called I'm not a winner, and then enter the website anyway. So lots of shaming of masculinity going on. An equally popular motivational poster may be seen here, using a quote that is not from Baldwin IV, but apparently erroneously attributed to Carl Jung, who didn't say it either. And yes, this is from an Indian nationalist, so Baldwin appeals across borders. Unsurprisingly, after Elon Musk's takeover and the renaming of Twitter to X, it doesn't take much effort to find extremist examples of the memory of Baldwin. Nowhere is this more obviously visible than the profile called Trad West, which is Christian nationalist and Western supremacist in the Christ is King, and in the end we win vein. Most posts are supposed to evoke emotions of some sort or be motivational, such as this one, and no, Baldwin does not say that either. Not historically, not in the film. In spite of all of their talk about fighting for the West in this profile and saving souls, Trad West also keeps reminding viewers that merchandise is available, tying into the fitness epidemic, with Kingdom of Heaven Baldwin significantly featured, including in this post as recent as last week. Some scholars, or at least users with a degree of factual knowledge, have attempted to push back by pointing out the intention behind Kingdom of Heaven. The images and clips that we see used do not reflect the political message of Kingdom of Heaven, and especially not of the peace-loving King Baldwin. All of this seems to have fallen on deaf ears and even been subverted. I even see some right-wing accounts see it as a badge or mark of honor to be told that you lack media literacy. Very interesting term. In a February 2025 discussion about Luc Besson's controversial The Messenger about Joan of Arc, one user even coined the term kingdom of heavenification. About Christian nationalism taking images from anti-religious films and, to use a phrase usually seen by marginalized minorities, reclaim their heritage. Although the last two comments you see from this discussion here barely scratch the surface in terms of popularity, they capture a sentiment I've encountered often in these comments. Vibes, aesthetics, facade, those elements matter here, not content. And it keeps going. In May this year, I found this post, which has now been shown more than 23 million times, talking about being ready to sign up for a new crusade. No understanding of Kingdom of Heaven at all, but as one user said, it doesn't matter, the film has immaculate vibes. All of this brings to mind some of the frustrated points made by Steve Tibble in his 2023 book, Templars, the Knights Who Made Britain. Tibble does not talk about online extremism, he talks about Templar conspiracy theories, including the ones in fiction, and especially in a certain book about a code that we do not mention if we study the Templars. Some of the quotes from Tibble include, evidence is not the true arbiter of debate, and I think this serves for both conspiracy theories and this online appropriation. Evidence is not usually needed, but when people are so inclined, fraud can be resorted to, yes. The different genres feed off each other, and they feed off our desire for answers and certainty. The answers they provide are fantasies, but that barely slows the juggernaut down, which I think we definitely see in the memes presented here today. To educators and public historians, this despair seems all too familiar, losing a fight over general interpretation to shady and subversive entities. On the other hand, as pointed out by the user, Ms. Forlorn Kermit, those obsessing with the King Baldwin memes may perceptibly pigeonhole themselves as sad incels or a part of male loneliness as narratives or memories are continually pushed back and forth. But what do we do? I turn to Wells of Learning and my students once again. Every time I teach extremist or potentially extremist legacy of the Crusade material, be it memes or manifestos, I talk to my students about what it was like working with it, and the answers are always the same. It was exciting and relevant. More than any other topic, this is one that the students tell me they talk about with their friends and parents outside of school. Many of them are shocked at how few steps there are from something they enjoy or laugh at to potential radicalization and definite extremism. So according to my students, what should educators do? First of all, take heart. As one student said, our teachers are expletive poor. Not in the how do you do fellow kids style, but as in actually seeing us as inspirational. So please remember that if you're educators, you can inspire people. Bring the controversial and grotesque topics into the classroom and set the stage for the students to navigate them. This is one I hear over and over again. Explore the grey areas and borderlands between that's funny and that's another expletive that begins with an F. But having that discussion, allowing for that reflection in the classroom, be it upper secondary school or undergrad, is really, really worthwhile. Challenge views without becoming too confrontational. One of my students called me out for having been too confrontational, falling into that as a pitfall. And to turn to a tiny bit of theoretical framework, in a pan-Nordic teaching journal 35 years ago, my fellow Dane Stein Larsen proclaimed that communicating history only works when it walks on two legs, the intellectual one and the emotional one. And you should always adjust the way you walk to your current audience. The younger and less academically inclined, the more you should probably rely on the emotional layer. Now, stating the importance of finding a balance between two different elements and paraphrasing logos and pathos is hardly original or groundbreaking. But I like keeping this in the back of my mind when I plan my lessons. Remembering to walk on two legs is a solid groundwork and sets the stage for learning. Unfortunately, in education, we seem to already be behind, since so many of the examples I've shown you here today offer quick and easy answers, fully leaning on the emotional layer. The world of education cannot, but we can do something else. As I hear from numerous students every year, there is no nuance on social media and in memes. School provides that. Education provides that. And finally, the final quote I have from a student, history is an underrated subject, it can be used for everything. Yes, please. Yes, please. Listen up, politicians. So my final point here is that it is far, far too easy to be seduced by easy solutions in the digital world, especially if you are young and insecure. Tristan, do I have 2 minutes for some more fun? Okay, cool. Because I'd like to go a bit with the emotional stuff and communicating history. So once again, please close your eyes. And I want you to think of Robin Hood, another legendary character. Can you see Robin Hood in your mind's eye? Brilliant. Now, please, if you can, turn around to the person sitting next to you and tell them what you saw.
I saw a fox.
I saw a fox and then Russell Crowe because my mom recently watched that movie.
A fox and Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Very good.
Question. Did anybody see a fox? Yes! And how many saw Kevin Costner's mullet?
Kevin Costner's mullet.
He is the gateway to carry that low-hanging tunic, absolutely. Yeah. But what I'm trying to show you is when we communicate history, literature, or whatever our specialty is to the general public and younger students, please don't forget the emotional, the inspirational, even if it is just very Robin Hood. Because apparently that works for so many of us as a gateway to get into medievalism and learning and all that. Please don't forget the emotional, inspirational, because I see so many students who are not at risk, but starting to veer towards the manosphere and so on. And I don't want them to patent the inspirational. So academics, if you can tell teachers stories from the past that are inspirational, we can bring into the classroom. If you can flood social media with it, that would be absolutely brilliant. Because I cannot stress, obviously, toxic behavior remains unacceptable. How do we prevent as many young people as possible from going in that direction? And I still cling to the hope that with the right effort, my students' only reaction when they encounter extremist content is to go, thank you.